Which Side Podcast is a proud member of the Which Side Media Collective.
This week's episode is brought to you by Brandon and Becky Mullins.
I love you both.
They wanted to give a shout out to Fuck Yeah Vegan Life, Taking on Water Co., and everyone in the vegan Instagram community. Not everyone is an activist, and they come from all walks of life. But we have made some solid friends. Much love and respect.
Hey, you made another friend over here.
You've got a friend in me. Why do I have to sing every time? I don't know. But
I don't know.
Whatever, it works.
I like it. It makes my heart feel nice and full.
If you'd like to sponsor an episode, all you have to do is donate at least $10. That's all we ask, because that is how much an episode costs to make.
Yeah, so just head over to wishsidepodcast.com, sponsor an episode, and we'll shout out whatever you want. Pretty much anything. As long as it's, vegan.
Yeah. Whichsidepodcast.com. Click on the donate tab.
This is episode 111.
111.
111.
It's like a claw mark with 3 claws or something. This week we speak with Bruce Friedrich
from Farm Animal Sanctuary, previously of PETA. If you watched the Beat Your Meat and that helped you become vegan, or if you gave that out to anyone, this is the guy you got to thank for that. He's done a lot. So sit back and enjoy. What news and events do we have going on this week?
You should probably check out your local Food Not Bombs chapter and help them out. And if you don't have a local Food Not Bombs chapter, you should create one.
Create one. Go to a soup kitchen. Go help out another shelter. There's a million ways you can always, get out there and help people. So do it. Just get out there. Christmas Eve, which is the 24th of December in 1913. Right? Does this date scream to you at all?
I think I was busy on 1913.
There's actually a documentary about this also. It's actually a pretty good documentary. It's called The Massacre of 1913. There was a coal strike going on, and the coal strikers gathered in their local hall for a Christmas Eve celebration. And one of the company's stooges of their mining company came in and yelled fire, caused a stampede. 72 children ended up dying.
It's fucked up.
Way fucked up.
Some of the mining strike.
Oh my
stuff
god!
Back in the day,
I know this one and Ludlow are always the ones in my mind. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I pulled these out of the Slingshot Personal Organizer. Right now is the perfect time to get one. Get one at a local info shop, at an online info shop. Just help support the Slingshot community. They're a collective.
And it's the perfect time to get one because it's the new year.
It is. So they don't pay us for this. We just really like them. And plus you get all these cool little tidbits like we share every single week. I hope you guys enjoy this episode.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side? Which side are you on? 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 Which side are you on?
Hello.
Hello. I'm Jordan.
Hey, Jordan, how are you?
Doing good.
I'm Jeremy.
Hey, Jeremy.
So, what have you been up to today?
I am researching kosher slaughter laws and regulations. Good times.
That sounds like a rip-roaring day.
So that's is that what you do on your day off?
Yeah. It's interesting if depressing and distressing. I'm also going over some memorandums of interview and non-compliance records that we got via FOIA from USDA.
That sounds some lighthearted work you got going on.
Yeah, it's a little sad, but I'm trying to figure out if we have a way forward. Well, we definitely have a way forward. I'm trying to figure out what our best way forward is.
So, researching kosher, I know very little about kosher killing, like except that it's horrible. That's pretty much all I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's a pretty complex topic. It is horrible. It doesn't have to be significantly more horrible than standard slaughter, but sometimes it is. And so far, USDA has interpreted its mandate with regard to the Humane Slaughter Act and ritual slaughter as non-existent. And I don't think that's an accurate read. So I'm working with some people in the Jewish community, in the conservative and reform Jewish communities, attempting to figure out a way to get some regulations and some oversight of ritual slaughter, not just kosher slaughter, but ritual slaughter as a whole. So I'm looking at theories.
What's the big difference between ritual and kosher slaughter?
Well, kosher is a form of ritual slaughter. So ritual slaughter is also halal. Halal and kosher are the only ritual slaughters that currently exist in the United States. Uh-huh. But pretty much anybody could say, I have a religion and I want to set up ritual slaughter. And it would have to abide by the Humane Slaughter Act, which isn't completely non-existent, but as long as they do this, one small thing in the Humane Slaughter Act, which was passed 1958, so a long, long time ago, they could then, according to USDA regulations, do whatever they want. So, they could be lighting the animal on fire as they lead her to slaughter, and USDA would claim that it has no regulatory oversight authority because it's a part of the whole kosher process or ritual process. And I think it's inconceivable that could be right, but we need to come up with some legal theories for why that's not right.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Don't the animals have to be killed alive? Is that something that...
Well, they have to be. They can't be stunned first. So, I mean, the theory is, and there's an awful lot from the kosher oversight authorities. The theory is that as long as you hit the two key veins with one slice of the knife, death is virtually instantaneous. And I haven't looked closely at the science on that, but I think that is not inconceivable. The sort of bigger problem is that USDA authorities have said as long as they are attempting to do that, they're claiming they have no oversight authority whatsoever. Which means that as long as you're claiming that you're, leading the animal to this point at which with one slice of the knife you're going to render her insensible to pain instantaneously, you can do other things first, no matter how cruel they are.
How accurate is it that they can actually hit both those veins at once?
I haven't looked closely at that yet. My recollection from when I last looked at that, which was about a decade ago when I was at People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, and we had launched our agri-processors investigation, which I oversaw that the sort of campaigns and media component of that. My recollection is that you can hit both the veins at once, and if that happens, the animal will be dead within 10 to 15 seconds. But I am just beginning to look at this whole thing again with a view toward filing a petition with USDA to promulgate meaningful regulations, and then if they refuse to do that, suing them.
How hard is that whole process to actually go through and then file those with the USDA?
Well, I mean, you could file something with USDA that they would have to respond to, and if you I could do it in 15 minutes, it would be pretty crappy. So if you want to do the legal research that sets you up to have a meaningful lawsuit, you could do something acceptable in a couple of days. You could do something thorough and good in a couple of months. So sort of somewhere in between those two. I'm planning with regard to this to make it extraordinarily thorough. So I'm going to read all of the case law, read all of the journal articles that have been written, speak with Jewish scholars and authorities, look at the legislative history. So it will probably take me, 160 hours working, diligently on it. So fitting that into my schedule, I would expect to have it done, maybe in the summer.
Wow. That is insane.
Well, I think it's. I'm not sure exactly what you're saying is insane, but my hope is that it will actually lead to something transformative that decreases the awfulness of slaughter for an awful lot of animals in their final moments.
When I first got into activism, when somebody sat down and said, "Okay, if you sit down and put in 160 hours worth of work, we might have something to move forward on," I'd be like, "Nope, I'm good. I'm going to walk away now." It just seems like an awful lot of work knowing before, significant change can happen with it.
Well, yeah, it's even a little bit worse than that, because you put in the work, you file the petition, and then you wait 18 months for them to reply.
Yeah.
So it's even a little bit worse than that. But at the end of it, there is an awful lot of awareness raised, because these sorts of things are exactly what the media is paid to cover. The lawsuits raise even more awareness. So raising awareness about who farm animals are and what they're suffering, I think, is an excellent way of moving people away from eating them at all. And then at the end of it all, hopefully you actually do accomplish something that decreases animals' suffering. And if you are those animals, even though we're looking at a best case scenario of 2.5 years and a worst case scenario, of failure, but hopefully that will avoid that. So assuming that we are successful, it could take as long as 4 or 5 years. But all animals from that point forward who are slaughtered for ritual slaughter will have at least some modicum of protection, which I think would be meaningful if you were the animal involved.
And you said you had some supportive scholars in the Jewish community?
Yes. It was pretty interesting when we did the agri-processors investigation. Do you guys remember that?
Which one was it?
Agri-processors, the kosher investigation that PETA did a decade ago.
Yeah. That's where all of my limited knowledge stems from.
Yeah, that was pretty whack. The background of that was that we got reports that this place was bad. So we wrote to them and said, "Hey, we have reports that things aren't as they should be. We'd like to work with you. The ideal of kosher slaughter is that it is better than conventional slaughter, and we would like to get Temple Grandin in there to help you clean up." And they basically wrote a really just extraordinarily shitty letter back, which is why we sent somebody in there undercover. And what we documented was just so much worse than our worst imaginings and expectations. And as a result, the kosher buying community, other than a very small segment of the ultra-Orthodox, was completely supportive of PETA and what PETA was trying to do. The conservative movement of the Jewish community, which is about 40% of Judaism and is the largest portion of Judaism, as a movement, officially came out in support of the investigation and in condemnation of agri-processors. Many Reform rabbis, many conservative rabbis, some Orthodox rabbis. So although the ultra-Orthodox, and they're the folks who actually do the certification and run the slaughterhouses, are not particularly sympathetic. Their customers, for the most part, are sympathetic. So I think we'll have some real success getting some reforms.
So when you first got involved in activism, was this like the activism that you envisioned would be happening?
Well, so animal activism specifically you're talking about, I was hired at PETA in 1996, and I was overseeing PETA's vegan and anti-vivisection campaigns. So we were largely focused on advocating veganism and opposing animal experimentation sort of across the board. And a few years after I got to PETA, the McLibel verdict came down in the UK. I think that was 1999. Mm-hmm. And the McLibel verdict, it's still the longest trial in British history, and the worst corporate debacle probably in corporate history. McDonald's suing a couple of unemployed activists who were making accusations about the corporation. One of those accusations was that they were abusing animals horribly. And when the decision came down from the High Court in Britain, the judge ruled in half a dozen ways, and on cruelty to animals said that McDonald's was culpably responsible for cruelty to animals. And he wrote about 100 pages, and some of what he talked about had to do specifically with animal welfare issues, where McDonald's wielded a large enough shopping cart that they could dictate the practices of their suppliers. And we took that and went after McDonald's, trying to convince the corporation that it should make some changes, and were eventually successful in getting some changes. And I think that was a real difference for PETA. Certainly a difference for me, although I had been doing human rights and anti-war activism for some years at that point. I don't know if that was an answer to your question or not. It was certainly long-winded.
Well, so before you worked for PETA, you said you were working on like anti-war and human rights activism?
Yeah, I ran a homeless shelter and a soup kitchen in the inner city in Washington, D.C., a part of the Catholic Worker Movement. And the Catholic Worker Movement is focused on the works of mercy from Matthew 25, so feed the hungry, clothe the naked, visit the sick and imprisoned. And it is simultaneously focused on asking why people are homeless and hungry and in prison. And for a significant portion of the Catholic Worker Movement, points the finger at war making, both because war disempowers people and because the money that is spent on war could be spent on social uplift. So a part of running a homeless shelter and a soup kitchen, we also organized demonstrations against war making. So every week at the Pentagon, and then a few times a year, the Feast of the Holy Innocents at the end of December, Hiroshima, Nagasaki days, August 6th through 9th, lefty, largely faith-based peace activists would gather at various places where war is planned, or corporate hegemony like the World Bank and the IMF are planned that disempower the global poor and stage demonstrations. So I'd been doing that for since 1990, and then I came to PETA in 1996.
So did that kind of like lead into you becoming vegan and fighting for animals? Was that like the origin of it?
I adopted a vegan diet in 1987, my first year of college. And I got to college and joined a group called the Latin American Support Organization, which was looking at U.S. policy in Guatemala, El Salvador, Nicaragua, and then another organization called Poverty Action Now, which was looking at both global poverty and domestic poverty. So we organized fasts for Oxfam International. We went to the homeless shelter in Des Moines to volunteer, which was actually a Catholic worker homeless shelter in Des Moines. And the people who ran those organizations, even all the way back in 1987, they were vegan for global poverty reasons, really. Just the the fact that growing crops to feed those crops to animals so that we can eat animals is grossly inefficient, and it contributes to a global marketplace that causes people to starve. So I adopted the vegan diet in 1987 on the basis of human rights, mostly anti-global poverty and pro-environment reasons, and was at the Catholic Worker from 90 to 96, and somewhere around 1993 or 1994, I read Andrew Lindsay's Christianity and Animal Rights, and that's what got me interested in animal rights. So I've been vegan for 7 or 8 years for human rights reasons before I even understood the animal issue.
So, I mean, I've been vegan since the early 90s, so a little over 20 years, but you've been vegan for quite a bit longer than I have. And I just want to know, like, what kind of changes have you seen in just being vegan and, like, the acceptance of it and the accessibility of it, really?
Well, it certainly has become a lot more mainstream since the 80s. That's for sure. And obviously, there are a lot more celebrities and moguls and other people who have adopted a vegan diet who have sort of mainstreamed it. I saw the other day the McLaughlin Group, and Mort Zuckerman was talking about how he'd been a vegan for 6 years for animal reasons, but he also lost 40 pounds and feels great. When somebody like Mort Zuckerman can adopt a vegan diet, you know it's arrived. But yeah, I mean, when I adopted a vegan diet in 1980, I'm not a foodie. So when I adopted a vegan diet in 1987, I don't think it was as hard for me as it is for a lot of people. I was pretty happy to subsist on peanut butter sandwiches and oatmeal and beer. I think if beer had not been vegan, I might have found it difficult. But other than that, it didn't cause for me the same sorts of challenges that it causes for a lot of people. I grew up in Minnesota and Oklahoma, so I was sort of living on Big Macs and French fries, and probably it was a good thing that I moved away from that, from a health and sort of every other reason.
Was your family supportive of your change at the time? I mean, I can't imagine in the 80s it was very well received by a lot of people.
My family was surprisingly supportive. I also did not have to deal with that element that a lot of people have to deal with. I mean, my parents are sort of bohemian, sort of hippie types. So even in the mid 80s, my parents were taking me. This is Oklahoma, and they were taking me to gay rights events, and Reagan was mining the harbors of Nicaragua, and Iran-Contra and all that sort of stuff was going on. And my parents were active in Oklahoma with the Peace Center there in Oklahoma City. So they're sort of it was pretty natural. And once I pointed out to them the point that Francis Moore Lepay makes in Diet for a Small Planet, which is the vast inefficiency of growing so many crops to feed them to animals, and the moral atrocity that represents in a world where like 1 billion people are living in nutritional deficit, which is a euphemism. They're starving to death. They're not taking in enough calories to sustain basic life functioning. Like the moral injustice of that, and the fact that we contribute to it if we consume animal products because of their vast inefficiency. My parents got it, right away. Even more surprisingly, my extended family, not exactly supportive, but nobody was belittling or unwelcoming, despite the fact that all of my uncles are hunters and fishers, and I've got an aunt who hunts, and so not the people you would expect to be the most sympathetic, but nobody was unkind about it, which I know now. I didn't realize how blessed I was in that regard at the time.
Yeah, I hear some people's stories, especially when they decide to make the change at a younger age, like where they're still living with their parents. I mean, I've heard of kids being kicked out of their houses. I mean, just atrocities. Like really, it's really, really sad.
Yeah, no, I've heard those stories as well, and I mean, even if they're not kicked out of the houses, just the sort of lack of acceptance. Like your family is supposed to be the one place where you get unconditional love, and I with my parents, certainly on this issue got that. Probably on every issue got that, but it's really sad to me how many people this turns out to be a real. I mean, even if they're, if it's not as extreme as being kicked out of the house, the lack of acceptance and the unkindness. I mean, the sort of, in some families, it's like, fear of the unknown or fear that their child is going to, not live unless they're eating animal products or whatever. But for some, it's just, it seems like it's just, cruelty or guilt, or I don't know what the motivation is, but, I very thankfully didn't have to deal with that.
So it seems to me that religion in general played a huge part in your transformation to becoming vegan and becoming an activist for all forms. And it seems funny to me because when I became vegan, that's actually what pushed me away from religion. So what is like those backings that kind of highlighted it for you to make that a positive?
I think this is another. I mean, for me, it's another sort of oddity. It's anomalous to a lot of people's experience. But so for my confirmation back in probably I think it was like 1982, we put on a skit for my confirmation that had to do with Matthew 25. And Matthew 25 is the one place in the Gospels where Jesus explains what salvation looks like. And he says explicitly that salvation has absolutely nothing to do with what you believe. It has exclusively to do with how you lead your life. And did you cast your lot with those who were suffering? That's the question that determines salvation. Doesn't matter if you're a Christian or an atheist or whatever else. And in the Catholic tradition, Dorothy Day is, one of the lay people who is held up as, saintly. And she, from the 1930s, was talking about how the atheists who live for others are far more religious and far more Catholic by the way they lead their lives than the people who just show up at church on Sundays. So this is the tradition that I was raised in, and I met a couple of radical clergy in college. A guy named Bud Dixon, who was bringing people from the refugee movement to Grinnell, Iowa, to speak, and volunteering at the Catholic Worker with a priest named Frank Cordaro, who I've remained close friends with ever since, in Des Moines. And when I adopted, neither of them was vegan, but when I adopted a vegan diet and talked with them about why, Bud Dixon, the Lutheran minister, immediately adopted a vegan diet. Like, it just clicked for him and he got it. And Father Frank, still not vegan, but consistently apologetic about not being vegan. Those people. Yeah. But he got it. Like, he wasn't. He totally recognizes that it's the morally preferable. It is the Christian path. And I ran a homeless shelter for families and a soup kitchen under the auspices of the Catholic Worker for 6 years. And I converted many, many people to veganism, both for the global poverty and the environmental arguments, as well as for the animal protection reason. And nobody attempted to suggest that it wasn't the preferable faith-based path. So I know in the same way that a lot of people with their families get real pushback on veganism, a lot of people in their faith communities get real pushback on the basis of their veganism. But for me as a Catholic, it was a pretty natural extension of being a feminist and a pro-gay Catholic to also be a vegan animal rights Catholic. And there are obviously a lot more feminist and pro-gay than there are animal rights Catholics. And one of the things that the people in the Catholic Church who are opposed to the just war theory, who are opposed to the Church's treatment of women and GLBTQ community, one of the things that they consistently say is, if we leave, we are the Church's redemption. We are the ones who are best walking in the path of Jesus in Matthew 25. And if we leave, then the Church goes downhill. And the preferable path is to stay and continue to fight for justice. So it wasn't difficult for me as a Catholic animal rights person to just sort of add this to the other things that I'm trying to improve the Church on.
I mean, as a layperson, the new current Pope seems to be pretty progressive as far as Catholicism goes. Like, what's your take on a lot of his actions? Like, I know he recently came out and said something about, no animals do go to heaven.
Yeah, unfortunately, he didn't say that.
Yeah, that was a
Okay, like I said, I'm pretty lay on it. I don't.
Yeah, well, it was reported that way on the front page of the New York Times, so you can you can be forgiven for believing that the New York Times actually fact checked their story before they printed it. But they've corrected the story since, so it's the exact same URL, and it now actually explains what happened. And you get down to the bottom of the story, and there's the New York Times mea culpa for getting the story wrong. But Paul VI said that. Benedict XVI said the opposite of that. And Francis, by picking St. Francis of Assisi for his name, it seems likely. It seems not unlikely that he believes that. And I think the reason that the New York Times and so many other media outlets went with it is it just makes sense. And he may, believe that. He may not believe that. It's tough to know for sure. But he certainly is sympathetic on animal and environmental issues. And it's not outside the realm of what. It's not outside of Catholic doctrine, although if he said it, that wouldn't make it Catholic doctrine either. But he does, I think it's he's certainly a move in the right direction. You couldn't go too much in the wrong direction than Benedict.
So we live in a very largely faith-based society, and we grew up in that. And it just really shocks me because within the society here, they have doctrine that specifically states that you should only eat meat sparingly and only in times of winter and in famine, yet no one does. And so it's shocking that people can actually they get radicalized behind like the scripture that you were mentioning. It's certainly, I agree. I mean, it's people are interesting, and there's a tremendous amount of cognitive dissonance. I mean, the official Mormon doctrine is pretty good, much like the Seventh-day Adventist doctrine is pretty good. And as you rightly note, most people are not aligning their lives with the doctrine. Of course, that's way outside of the realm of religion as well. Like, you talk to people, Gallup, 97% of people, according to Gallup, want to see animals treated well and believe in legal protection for animals. 95% believe in legal protection for farm animals. I mean, 95% of people don't agree on anything, right? Like, this is the one thing even the libertarians think there should be laws to protect these animals. And yet 90% of people continue to eat animals. Probably 98% of people eat animal products. And, what that means is that they are violating their own ethical principles, every time they choose to eat animal products. So, it's a cognitive dissonance that we all in the animal rights community need to be consistently chipping away at. And I think we can take some real hope in the fact that, when there was the poster how to win an argument with a meat eater, which when I started at PETA, we had up in our break room because we were renting the third floor of our building to a cruise line
we bought this building in Norfolk, and this cruise line had the third floor, and a part of our lease was that they had to continue to be able to be there for like 5 years or something. So we were sharing our building with all of these, the vast majority, or maybe none of them, vegetarians. And so we put this "How to Win an Argument with a Meat Eater" poster in the kitchen, so that they would see this poster every time they went in there. And yeah, it was our little passive aggressive. We did the aggressive thing too. It wasn't just passive aggressive, but it's heartening to me to realize that we don't have to win arguments with anybody. We just have to educate people about what's happening, because they already agree with us that abuse of animals unnecessarily is wrong. And what is the entire meat industry and vivisection industry and circus, all of this is the unnecessary abuse of animals. So our goal was actually, it's not easy, because human nature is cognitive dissonance, but we don't have to convince very many people to change what they already believe ethically. We just have to help them to recognize that what they already believe ethically has some implications in what they choose to eat or wear or how they amuse themselves.
I've never thought about it that way. Like the aspect of starting from the point of agreement on, the abuse of animals. We can both agree that is wrong. I don't know why in the past 20 years it's never clicked with me.
It seems like a very logical step.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the key things that Matt Ball and I talk about in the Animal Activists Handbook. Like one of the key themes of that book is that if we want to convince people to agree with us on an animal issue, we are going to be a lot more effective if we have conversations with people and use the Socratic method to help people to recognize that on the key ethical issues, they already agree with us, and then help them to see that the implications of that agreement are some changes in lifestyle, and then hopefully to help them to see that it's not as difficult as what they might have built up in their own minds and imaginations.
So, looking at the whole animal rights community as a whole, is there something that you kind of wish the community in general is focusing on more that just no one has the resources or time to kind of focus on?
No, I think the focus is really going in the right direction. I'm excited to see the ASPCA going after the chicken industry. I think probably the worst suffering of animals in society is the fact that chickens now grow 7 times as quickly as they would naturally. So they're all in chronic pain throughout their entire lives. And I think it's a real step in the right direction that the ASPCA is getting into farm animals at all. And then they are simultaneously taking on the hardest and certainly arguably the most important of the issues. And I think all of the organizations are largely moving in that same direction. All of the legitimate animal protection and animal rights organizations are pretty focused on farm animals, which is the thing that pretty much everybody can do something really good about on an everyday basis. And most of the organizations are recognizing that chickens are the most abused, and the animals that we should really be laser focused on. So I mean, we certainly need more resources. I would like to see some of the, if Mort Zuckerman wanted to give a few $100 million a year of his fortune to promoting his own ethics of compassion for animals, I think we could do a lot more. But I'm happy to see most of the animal protection movement working together and working on things that I think are meaningful and important and will make positive change.
How do you feel about the criticisms that a lot of animal rights activists give that a lot of the big animal rights organizations now are kind of switching more towards animal welfare issues?
Well, I mean, I think I might need specifics. I mean, HSUS is an animal welfare organization, and they have leapt into farm animal issues in a way that's making a huge positive difference. The ASPCA is an animal welfare organization, and they're getting into farm animal issues in a way that's making a positive difference. So I think there's sort of two criticisms. One is, should that be happening at all? Because I don't think there's a tenable argument that the ASPCA or HSUS should be doing animal rights, because that's not what those organizations do, and they would have no members. So I think it's going to be sort of a critique by critique. But I think the work that they're doing is having a meaningful impact on the lives of the individual animals whose lives are becoming less hideous. And I think that the issue of farm animals is being elevated in a way that's really, really important. And the natural extension, like once somebody says, yes, I'm going to go and vote in a way that is affirming of farm animal welfare, or yes, I'm going to make purchasing choices or whatever else in a way that casts me as somebody who makes decisions on the basis of wanting to be kind to farm animals, I think we've got them, because then it's a lot easier to say, well, should you be eating those animals at all? So I see it as real progress, and I see all of these groups working on these issues as moving in the right direction. So you've got groups like Mercy for Animals and Farm Sanctuary and PETA and Compassion Over Killing saying eating animals at all is immoral, and then you've got other organizations like HSUS and the ASPCA and Compassion and World Farming pushing the envelope on farm animal welfare, and I think all of it together makes a really positive difference.
I think a lot of the criticism that I personally hear come into play, like PETA on the KFC campaign, where they were advocating for larger cages, where, isn't that more of a welfare issue, and that's better suited for welfare organizations, and shouldn't you be focusing more on animal rights issues? I don't know if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, no, I understand that for sure, and I think that one of the goals of campaigns like the KFC campaign is to say, hey, chickens matter. And a campaign that is just KFC should not be serving chickens at all is going to be a lot harder to get celebrity support for. It's going to be a lot harder to get media attention for. It's going to be a lot harder to get editorials in support of. And those are three things that are critically important to reaching the maximum number of people. So if the question is, what should we be saying to the 200 people who see us in front of a KFC? Maybe vegan is the answer would make a lot of sense. If the goal is to reach millions of people by involving, Al Sharpton and Cornel West and all of, the Beastie Boys, and getting editorials in support of the campaign in the Chicago Tribune, and all of that sort of thing, I think the tactics have to be a little bit different. And one of the really good things about something like the KFC campaign is it forces people to engage with what exactly is happening. So because PETA is saying, KFC needs to stop breeding these Franken animals who cannot even walk, people learn that animals raised in the United States are so genetically bred and drugged up that they can't even walk. When PETA says you need to change the way chicken slaughter happens because right now you're boiling animals alive, people learn that animals are being boiled alive in a way that if they just, I don't know what a campaign against KFC would even look like. Maybe people think there shouldn't be a campaign against KFC. PETA should do nothing but promote veganism. But I think they certainly do. They probably, I think they probably do as much as any other organization in the country to promote veganism. But they simultaneously have these campaigns that raise these issues and educate people in a way that I think is really useful. as the person who launched the KFC campaign, I suppose I would think that.
We talked to a lot of people that feel that grassroots animal rights activism across the United States is kind of going down on a low right now, comparatively over the last couple of years. Would you kind of agree with that?
Well, I think there's less of the really radical sort of shack-like activism. It seems to me that there's less of that. Mm-hmm. But you look at vegan outreach and the Humane League, and I think one would be hard-pressed to suggest that grassroots activism is accomplishing less. I think it's accomplishing more and more. I think vegan outreach gave out more than 1 million leaflets on college campuses last year. The Humane League, I think they just announced that. Well, they definitely just announced that they're opening 2 more grassroots offices. So I think they're now at like offices in 11 cities or something. And these are extraordinarily positive developments. I went and spoke at a Humane League event in Charlotte, North Carolina, and like 300 people turned up, and the office had only been open for like 6 or 7 months at that point. So maybe if you're talking about grassroots activism as people who are really angry and doing home demos and screaming anti-vivisection slogans, there's less of that. Not to belittle that, but I do think that the focus on farm animal issues and vegan issues, and just looking at what Mercy for Animals and Compassion Over Killing and Vegan Outreach and the Humane League are all doing, they're getting bigger and bigger and more effective. All of those groups year by year, which I think really belies the idea that grassroots activism is doing anything other than getting stronger, and it seems to me more savvy.
And I feel like underground direct action has also been in a decline over the years as well.
I definitely agree with that too.
Yeah, I'm not paying close enough attention to that to be able to comment, but I am paying attention to the farm animal and the vegan grassroots stuff, and that stuff it seems to me is in ascendancy and accomplishing quite a lot, and I think it's just going to get more and more effective, which I think is fantastic.
So someone who finds themselves just becoming vegan and wanting to become active, what kind of resources would you give to them to say, this is what you should be doing and here's how to get involved in your community?
Well, if they're in DC, getting involved with COK, if they're in a community that has a Humane League office, that's a natural way to get involved. Vegan Outreach's Adopt a College program, I think, is very, very exciting. So all of those things strike me as really valuable ways to get involved. And I mean, I take a lot of heart in the idea that each person who you convince to adopt a vegan diet, that person doubles your entire lifetime as a vegetarian or a vegan. So I imagine everybody who's listening who's vegetarian or vegan feels really good about that. And it is great to live out our values. Every time we make a choice about what we're going to eat, we are comforting the afflicted and afflicting the comfortable. It's really exciting to think that each time you have a positive interaction with somebody and they adopt a vegan diet as a result of that interaction, in that moment, boom, you've doubled your entire lifetime as a vegan or a vegetarian. So every individual can make a huge positive difference by getting involved in vegan leafleting or getting involved with online advocacy, or getting involved through the various, all of the organizations keep email lists and get people active in writing letters and doing all kinds of positive things for animals.
I never talk to another vegan and food never comes up. Like, it always seems to come up something. So this time of year, how do you do like the celebrations, like Thanksgiving or like the Christmas celebrations? Do you have like large feasts? Like, what kind of food do you like to prepare?
As I mentioned earlier, I'm not a foodie, and I do an awful lot of interviews for like Thanksgiving and Christmas, and the vast majority of time I come prepared with like a list of things that when this question inevitably comes up, I'm ready for it. And for whatever reason, for this podcast, I don't know what, talking to other vegans, I should have totally known that food was going to come up, but somehow I thought we were going to be focused on activism and not, and that sort of thing, and not food. So I didn't prepare, but we do go to a lot of gatherings, and I continue to love the tofurkey. And we bring that to holiday gatherings with friends and family. There's the new holiday roast, which I think is really very good, and pretty much everything that people are used to having not vegan, other than the actual dead bird, can be pretty easily veganized. And the faux dead bird products. I mean, even my hunting, fishing, meat-eating relatives, they don't think it tastes like dead bird, but they think it tastes good. It's an acceptable stand-in.
So, how do you feel about the whole Hftagn Creek Unilever lawsuit?
They just
I think it's
did they?
It's the best thing ever. Oh my gosh, it was well, Christmas and December, I guess, which is when Christmas is. But wow, that was just so phenomenal. Talk about, I was actually, when I mentioned the McLibel thing being the sort of worst corporate debacle, I think probably went on for years and was just bad press for McDonald's. But if Unilever had continued with the Hftagn Creek lawsuit, I think that would have rivaled the McLibel debacle. But fortunately, they filed it, and then a couple of weeks later they went, "Wow, that was really stupid," and they pulled it.
And
I mean, it's not necessarily over. I mean, the what they said was that they're going to leave it to the trade association and the FDA, but I think it's over. I don't think anybody's going to continue to enforce that standard against Hftagn Creek.
I think it gave them way more press than they would have otherwise ever gotten.
Oh yeah, no, it was an absolute gift. I mean, Josh Tetrick should be sending a very nice thank you note and holiday gift to all of the executives at Unilever who were involved in that decision.
And on the same day that they dropped the lawsuit, they got they announced that they had $90 million in backers for an egg replacement product.
Yeah, it's pretty great. It's pretty great, and I think it was Fortune magazine named Josh Tetrick and Josh Balk two of their primary innovators of the year or something. It's extraordinary. It's great to see for sure.
I'm kind of excited to see kind of the stuff that's coming out of Hftagn Creek. So they have like a new cookie line that's just came out. So I'm really excited about how vegan products are being marketed and focused now. Just like how Beyond Meat isn't necessarily marketed towards the vegan community. It's marketed towards the community that's more replacing it 2 or 3 times a week.
Yeah, I think an awful lot of the sort of literature about why people do not adopt a vegetarian or a vegan diet when they know they should focuses on the difficulty. So the more we can make that easier, the better, for sure.
So, what is your favorite vegan junk food that's out now?
What is my favorite vegan junk food?
I'm really just looking for new junk food. That's really what it is.
The food thing is not something that motivates me. I eat ungodly amounts of Deluxe mixed nuts and Cliff Bars. And I drink a lot of beer, but I'm not really. I don't eat a lot. I don't eat much at all of any of the sort of new innovative stuff. I'm still eating pretty much what I ate in the 80s when I first adopted a vegan diet.
That's fair enough. I like to try the new things, though. I love fatty, sugary food. So
I'm definitely not a health vegan.
Yeah.
Well, good for you. Yeah, no, I think we need to make it clear that veganism is not about asceticism. But I've never really been a foodie, so I eat sort of for sustenance more than anything else.
Oh, one of the things I wanted to talk to with you about is one of the things that when we talk to people, we always like to get their origin stories of what brought them to veganism. And I can't tell you how many times Meet Your Meat has been right up there. Like, oh, someone gave me Meet Your Meat, and that started my journey towards that. Like, how often do you get that, and how does that kind of make you feel?
I hear it pretty regularly, and it makes me feel extraordinarily good. Alec, Alec narrated Meet Your Meat. But Alex Pacheco had put a video together in 1995 or 1996 called The Diner. And it was just all of this sort of hideous factory farming and slaughter footage with music in the background. And I don't know whose idea, probably Ingrid's. She tended to have most of the best ideas, although everything sort of comes out of these Tuesday meetings that we would have at PETA. And somehow we decided to do Meet Your Meat, and me being German, I wanted to make it linear, animal by animal, and just sort of show people what the life of each of the animals was going to be. So Jem Aiken and I wrote the script and spent countless hours watching all of the footage that we could find from any organization and put that together. And it's extraordinarily gratifying that so many people have found it to be powerful, and so many people have changed their diets as a result. Makes me very, very happy.
So how do you feel about like the kind of new wave of a lot of the documentaries coming out? So, like Cowspiracy just came out. And it seems to be there seems to be almost a resurgence of documentaries focusing on animal rights.
I'm super excited about them, and I'm very impressed by the high quality. Ghosts in Our Machine and Cowspiracy and Speciesism. I thought Vegucated was a really fun time. Risa Miller's film Forks Over Knives, I think, does a phenomenal job of reaching people in a very mainstream way. I'm sure I've left out, one or more, but I think I think this is a really palatable way to introduce people to these issues, and I'm super, super excited about it.
What's like do you have like a favorite documentary that's been out for animal rights since the whole entire time?
I really liked the Animals film, which has been out for an extraordinarily long time. The guy who launched the Animals film got extraordinarily proprietary about a small segment of that video in a way that I think is really unfortunate. But the film, I think, stands the test of time in a really positive way.
I'm not familiar with that. What happened with that?
So there's a brief segment of debeaking that found its way into, it was just in tons of videos, and he really went after everybody who was using it, and which obviously I think is unfortunate. I was raised on the PETA philosophy of what's ours is yours. If you're using it to help animals, of course, we're not going to charge you for it. Of course, you should take it and use it. But it was, it was literally 3 seconds of video. And he went after, as far as I can tell, every single person that was using that 3 seconds of debeaking video. And now there's some equally good MFA debeaking video, and MFA shares the philosophy of, I think, all of the rest of the animal protection movement, which is, if we take this video, the video is to help animals. The video is not to help our organization. So, of course, absolutely, please use it. But that wasn't Victor's philosophy. It didn't seem.
So before we go, also I wanted to briefly talk to you about Farm Sanctuary and just let people know a little bit more about that.
Yeah, thank you. Farm Sanctuary is, we have 3 shelters, one in upstate New York, 2 out in California. We provide lifelong care for about 1,000 farm animals Farm Sanctuary was founded in 1986 by Gene Bauer and Lori Houston, and it has since 1986 been a vegan organization. We advocate that people treat farm animals in the same way and think of farm animals in the same way that we would think about dogs and cats. One of the things Gene, I think, has probably been saying since he founded the organization is farm animals are our friends, and we don't eat our friends. So we educate people about who farm animals are. We provide care for farm animals, and we advocate on behalf of farm animals. So we do vegan education, but we also have been working on all of the ballot initiatives and other legislation and litigation and regulation to try to make things a bit less bad for the animals who are on factory farms or who are going to be slaughtered.
So how can people, get in contact with you and follow Farm's work and help out?
People can get in contact with us and find out what we're up to and help out and visit the farms through our website, which is just farmsanctuary.org, farmsanctuary.org.
Well, perfect. Well, thank you very much. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I've enjoyed it too. I appreciate your inviting me on.
Yeah, well, have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you very much. I hope you both do too.
This week, you listen to Animal Rights by Deadmau5. Right now, you're listening to Cthulhu Fhtagn by Death Breath.
iTunes, it's super important. Just go there right now. If you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe. Here's the cool thing. It's free to subscribe. And even if you hate the show, you don't have to fucking listen.
Also, please
just download it.
Also, please rate and review us on iTunes.
Yeah.
Less than 0.00001% of our current listeners have rated and reviewed us on iTunes.
Yeah.
That's not cool, man.
Just take the 2 minutes that it takes to sign on. It would be very appreciated. It would make my heart feel full.
If you're not friends with us on social media, you should totally check us out. Like us and follow us on all of our different social medias. We often post things on there that we don't talk about on the podcast. Last night we had a live stream from a anti-police rally that shut down the interstate. So check out stuff like that.
WhitchSidePodcast.com.
Click on the social tab. Also, it's that generous time of year where you just give people things for no reason. We have a wish list on our website.
And we like getting things for no reason. I like to think of it there's a reason, because we give you this, then you can give us that, and then we can give you more, and then you can be like, yay!
Quid pro quo.
Exactly. But we don't require it. But it's just very nice if you can.
So, yeah, go to whichsidepodcast.com, click on the wish list, and
we have a lot of click-ons on this episode.
we do.
Just go to whichsidepodcast.com. There's a lot there.
Click on everything.
Just click on it all. Just go around, randomly click. I'm actually pretty certain you have a couple hidden things on there if you randomly click certain places.
I will neither confirm or deny this.
There you go. So click all around. Fuck shit damn, man.
Fuck shit damn.
We need a social media intern to join our team. If interested in becoming activist famous or a level 5 vegan, hit us up on social media. Which Side Podcast is hosted and produced by Jordan Halliday and Jeremy Parkin of the Which Side Media Collective, with web design by Jordan Halliday and sound design by Jeremy Parkin. Booking by Mari Halliday. Theme music by Commandantes. Go to whichsidecollective.org to check out the other shows in the collective. As always, fuck shit damn.